Hello, hopefully this works. So, okay. Uh, yeah. So, so today is we are going to have three awesome sessions. One, Terraform and Argo CD. Second is using Excel in HashiCorp by Ariel. AWS Control Tower account fact by Niroshan. And sorry, Terraform and Argo CD by Alex. So, it's not going. Pradeep, you're sharing from there, right? You're sharing from there? Do next. I cannot share. In short time, we will start our first session, Terraform and Argo CD, how to manage Kubernetes self-service. But before that, I would like to ask Zoe to come on the podium and she would give introduction about Rakuten. Zoe?
Yes.
Hey, stop this.
Hello. Okay. So just wanted to take like about 3 minutes to share a little bit about Rakuten. So Rakuten is actually founded in Japan, Tokyo, back in 1997. So we actually started off with just one business, which is actually Rakuten Ichiba. Hello, sorry. Rakuten Ichiba is actually our e-commerce business, and it's probably one of the business that most people actually know about. So as of today, we do have 70 different businesses across 30 countries, and we are currently one of the largest e-commerce company in Japan. So within Capital Green in Rakuten Asia, these are some of the companies that we actually host. So you can take a look at this. Okay, a little bit about our mission and vision. So basically, our mission is to actually contribute to society by creating values through innovation and entrepreneurship. And our vision is actually to be a global innovation company. So in order to be a global innovation companies, we do have a lot of partnership with global brands, such as Rakuten Golden State Warriors. We also do work with celebrities such as Sakira as well as Call Murray. So a little bit about our office. So we are located at Capital Green, and we do value quite a lot about diversity and also have an open office concept. So this is actually just an example of how our office look like. So currently we actually have four floors. Hello, in the building. So for us, right, we are also featured in the Smart logo as one of the most stylish office, and also we did win Great Place to Work 2 times in a row. As for employee engagement, we do have quite a lot of like interest groups as well as lunch and learn sessions in the office. Last but not least, we do organize quite a lot of tech events such as today. So we typically have one event at least every month. So you can just kind of like look out for our social media page. And last but not least, you can scan the QR code for current job openings in our company, and also do follow us on our social media platform. I'll just leave this slide on for a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Is it good? Alex, are you here? Yeah, I think you can do the setup. So while we wait for our first speaker, I just have to say a big thank you on behalf of HashiCorp, for everyone who's attending our second HashiCorp user group. And also a big thank you to Ritesh, who has taken up the co-organizer to help bring HashiCorp user group to be more consistent. So the next one we'll have is in August. The venue, we will decide again on where it will be, up to Ritesh and the team. But a big thank you for everyone who's come today to hear from the different speakers. So the speaker will be Alex, so a good friend from Prudential, but I'll let him do the introductions. Oh. There you go. Join without video. Oh shit. Okay. We go to where's your slide deck? Okay. I can share the whole screen and copy. Yeah. Can you? Yeah. Try. Testing. Here you go.
Yeah. Oh, few things that I want to do before we start, because I need some alibi for my wife. So if you can just wait, I will make a photo, and then it will be my alibi that I'm with you today, right? So let me do that. Okay, just breathe and smile. Okay, smile. Cool. That's. I'm not in that danger zone anymore. Yeah, thanks. Because that, after working hours and who knows what I'm doing. Yeah, and let me start my timer as well. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I believe we are ready to start. So my name is Alex, and this is the agenda for today for my talk. I will talk about, of course, Terraform and Argo CD, and I will talk about how to organize, how to manage Kubernetes self-service lifecycle. Before we start, actually, why I decided to use the timer, because I spent many minutes talking about this. And two things that I can do for whatever long, right? That's the water leakage in one data center in Europe. I mean, just to watch that leakage, right? If you understand the joke. And talking about Argo, yeah. Right after this talk, if you figure out the joke about water leakage in data center, just find me. I will give you some prize. Yeah. I need to share the warning before we start. So first of all, that's purely fictional, right? There is no real story behind that. And that may sound like a success story. Please don't be harmed or affected by success stories. I know that in this world, epic fails everywhere. So this will translate the success story, which is probably not true. And of course, I need to say that this presentation, this deck, and this talk may be generated by ChatGPT. Who knows, right? That's the reality. And one tool will be mentioned a few times. I hope that users and advocates for this tool will not be offended by my talk, right? So there is no intention to offend people at all. Okay, probably I created the whole presentation for this effect. Let me try one more time. Okay, that works. I have stickers for you. After this talk, just find me. I will try to distribute this sticker pack for you, for your laptop. Yeah, that's about Kubernetes, and probably you know this meme Twitter. So I know this guy, and we decide to print these stickers for you. Okay, now that's the story. And for Kubernetes lifecycle, we need to have some backstory. And the backstory is pretty straightforward. You can create Kubernetes clusters, especially managed in your public clouds or maybe private. And that's pretty easy. But meanwhile, you then want to configure them as well. And configuration can be quite complicated, right? Different manifests, resources, some things that you didn't expect to have, but you have them. So we did the same. We use our standard approach, how we configure different resources, for example, virtual machines. And we use the same approach for Kubernetes clusters, especially managed Kubernetes clusters. And it was totally fine before we got this to well-known situations. So the hyper growth and large-scale problem. It means then we talk about something in 200 clusters and maybe 30 specific applications that we need to install just to run your clusters before you can run your applications. And you need to reconfigure your clusters at least maybe dozens times a week, per week. That can be a problem. And I use this nice picture from, I believe, Martin Fowler, if you know that guy from ThoughtWorks, real situation. So we created this code based on our best knowledge before, and that was fine. And then that growth happened. And of course, I want to mention some problems. Then you can highly likely, or let's call them hypothetically, faced. But before we talk about problems, let's discuss the reference architecture, how you can manage your Kubernetes lifecycle. So this is what I have. This is I kind of prepared for you. And obviously, between this idea or the request to have a new cluster or a fresh configuration, the success, you have few things to do. One of that pretty straightforward thing is obviously provisioning stage. So we do provisioning with Terraform right now, and so far so good. I will not spend time on that. So resources, modern version, I mean, using the best practices, so far so good. Then, as I mentioned before, typically the pure cluster is not enough. You want to configure that. And this is the approach that maybe can copy from your virtual machine or maybe even on-prem private cloud. So you can rely on here. And how that works. So we have some bash glue in between phases. For example, in your CI slash, let's call them CD system. And then for each infrastructure application, for each configuration, you have your own role, right? Your option or your own Ansible role. And then you can run your configuration playbook. Of course, you need to create some let's call this mimic inventory, because you really don't have any inventory. There is no machine that's your Kubernetes control plane. And then you do this execution for your cluster 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever number you have, right? And that's pretty straightforward. As I mentioned, that's a very traditional approach, the same tooling that you can reuse from your virtual machine universe, and so far, so good. Before we, for example, faced with this situation with, let's call them large scale. And let's talk about problems. So what we did as problems, and this is the typical screen that you have a problem during the configuration with Ansible. So the first thing, it's more like about the performance, and that's really slow. When we talk about serial execution, you go cluster by cluster, and it can take time. Of course, you can try to make this parallel, right? And I'm not talking about even cluster after cluster approach. When you need to set up more than one application, right? You can do this in parallel, but the problem that it's really hard to manage the debug that parallel execution in Ansible, because that can be conflicts and so on and so forth. That's not that traditional approach. The next thing is the concept itself, right? It's a bit artificial. So you need to manage this not real fake inventory, pseudo inventory. You probably want to reuse K8S module in your Ansible or in Terraform. You also can do that. And of course, you deal with two-level templating. So you have Jinja templating. Meanwhile, you rely on YAML for your manifests, and sometimes that can generate bizarre problems. For example, escaping or how to pass through variables and so on and so forth. Oh, not that native. But once again, you can probably fix that problem, but it just make your learning curve a bit more steeper. We can talk about overall muffled experience when you do development for this configuration and troubleshooting. Whatever best you can do, it's actually execute with bigger, better verbosity. And I don't know, once again, maybe I'm not a fan of Ansible, but the process sometimes is a bit specific, right? And you definitely can invent some controls. Probably you can use debug or make conditions. So far, so good, but it definitely slows down the development and especially troubleshooting from. Okay. Mm-hmm. So next thing, it's more about how to guarantee that your reconfiguration, when you want to run this configuration again on top of your existing cluster, is fine. And we discovered that even if you follow the declarative approach in Ansible, sometimes it's really hard to achieve that level of idempotency, right? And that it is what it is, because Ansible give you that freedom, that flexibility, and some developers, they actually tend to use some dirty hacks, maybe, and yeah, it can be a problem, especially when we do initial configuration versus something that you can or need to run multiple times in different situations. And finally, the last thing, which is obviously a result of our growth, that's the traditional push model. So not a secret that in this case, Ansible has no agents. So it's session or one agent, and you just literally push whatever changes you have. So it means that you need to have this active environment. And if there is no active environment, you can do nothing, right? That should be runtime. And yeah, that's the result of push model. And especially when you need to do a massive reconfiguration. I don't know, you introduced a new storage class, and for us, that's a small configuration that we need to bring or want to bring centrally in our clusters. That's a problem because it will spin up a lot of executors and you need to provision a lot of resources, or you just need to wait, yeah, and then probably debug any problems of that scale up, scale down thing. Okay, that's the list of the problems. Let's quickly check what we can improve here. And whatever you see in this green box, that's exactly the improvement. And you can think that, okay, that very obvious, right? Thanks, Captain Obvious, right? So instead of running Ansible and relying on traditional roles and playbooks, we can introduce a tool which looks a bit more cloud native. And after a few rounds of research, it sounds like Argo CD, because right now Argo is not just Argo CD, that's Argo pipelines, that's Argo events, and many other things. So Argo CD, it sounds like a good tool which you can use for your configuration delivery process. And we decided that we can introduce Argo in this case and change the whole process right here. We still have Ansible. We use this Ansible shim in between provisioning phase with Terraform and phase with Argo, which is totally in a pool model right now. That's actually in the mixed model, and I will mention that, but finally that will be in a pool model. So what we have here, or how we can transition from whatever we discussed before to this shiny cloud native world. So first of all, you need to literally displace or rewrite, if you like that term, your configurations written in Jinja, Ansible roles into maybe Helm charts, or you can keep them as YAML manifests. So I believe that Helm charts today, it's more like a standard. So we can literally move from YAML/Jinja to Sprig, which is templating language, the Golang templating language, right, that used in Helm charts. Okay, so now we don't have roles, yeah, and we do not run the traditional Ansible configuration playbook. So now we can think about so making the execution, or actually routing the execution for clustering during the phase from Ansible to Argo. And in this case, the easiest way is to create a new role or playbook, or modify the playbook and allow Argo to add the cluster into Argo inventory and then create application. In our case, we literally replaced roles with applications written in Helm charts. So then all other future configurations that we can do, that will be in the pull mode. It means that we don't need to do this in push mode anymore, because Argo gives you that opportunity to be more flexible, which is quite nice. So in this case, we're talking about more like a mixed model. So first of all, we add the cluster and do app creation in a push model when we control this process. But for any future configurations or reconfigurations, we can do this quite flexible way with full model and synchronize the changes. One more thing, probably it sounds pretty straightforward and easy, but for some applications like Velero backup solution, open sourced, and not only Velero, but many others, that's probably not that easy to organize the transparent migration from traditional YAML files to charts. And it might require some wrappers or helpers to make this one-time migration, which obviously slow down and make the process of migration a bit more complex. So there is no silver bullet at all, right? So you need to do this extra mile to make a migration. So this is how the solution can look like. So we still have Ansible, and we even can do some things in Ansible. Maybe we don't need to rewrite all roles or all playbooks. We can run some rare configuration with Ansible, but then we hand over the control to Argo, and then we have Argo for that. And then, once again, the life cycle of your cluster after provisioning, initial provision, can be fully managed in a pool mode when you synchronize the changes cluster by cluster or application by application, or even partially if you want. Yeah, just as a fun thing, I probably want to share how that statistics can look like. And here you can see that traditional Argo standard classic dashboard in Grafana. That's from Argo project. And as you can see here, Argo, one instance of Argo, it's really not that big deal to manage 200 clusters or something like that. And we're talking about more than 1,000 applications. In this case, once again, application, that's a small pieces of infrastructure configuration that we bring before we can launch application. So it can be CRDs, that can be storage classes, that can be maybe injectors, Vault injector, or Nginx controller. So some of them can be real applications with pods, daemons, as some of them can be just CRDs, as I mentioned. But anyway, in total, you can easily control more than 1,000 applications on roughly 200 clusters with a single installation of Argo. And as you can see, the synchronization and pull process is quite active here. So there are many objects that are tracked by the system itself. And as the open source project, I believe Argo CD, it's not that bad choice if you want to control your clusters and especially resources on your clusters, and not only for your traditional application continuous delivery, that can be for infrastructure. As far as I know, you can get more from Argo. For example, you can try Argo events, and you can react on different events in your clusters. It means that you can initiate the cluster upgrade and then run something specific or even bizarre with your cluster using the same kind of bundle that can be Argo events plus Argo CD and, for example, charts or even your scripts. So that's more like a plug and play thing. And probably that's one of that next improvement that you can do if you want to make the setup and configuration even more dynamic, not just from push to pull, but more like reactive approach where you can react on different events. I don't know. Your user can request some resource. You have no information about that kind, and then you can install your infrastructure application or just application into that cluster, and the CRD will be in place, the controller will be in place, and your application can work fine dynamically with no, let's say, direct control from your infrastructure lifecycle. That's mostly it. As I mentioned, I tried to pack that in 20 minutes, and we have just 1 minute, 40 seconds. And probably that's a good time for your questions, if you have any. Yeah, I don't know how we manage questions, but I believe we can share the mic and get that mic back. Yeah, for best or for the craziest questions, I will give you sticker pack as well. And maybe for the best question, we can even do more. Maybe we can do a kind of T-short price. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. Can you?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, no, I have. And again. Really? Oh, okay. For that scale of problem. Have you tried simplify the whole provisioning by using cross-plane? Or whatever cluster. Hello.
Yeah, so let me try to rephrase or repeat the question and just find this talk. That's not correct. So the question is about, let's say, is there any chance to simplify the whole provisioning of the cluster using tools like crossplane, right, which gives you that opportunity? And that's a good one. The thing that provisioning phase for us, it's not just cluster provisioning. We have a huge we can talk about a huge portfolio of services. That can be virtual machines, that can be anything. And traditionally, that's a good experience and a nice legacy there. So TLDR, yes, I believe that the cluster provisioning can be also migrated into cloud native world with Argo CD or maybe with crossplane and Argo CD or any other tool, any other controller underneath. And maybe that's a good idea to make the full experience absolutely cloud native. Even more, right? As far as I know, that's possible to still reuse Terraform if you want to provision that cluster underneath as the engine and not like create cluster by cluster resource. But yeah, that's a good one. That's an option can be implemented. Probably can be considered as one more nice improvement for the whole life cycle. Yeah. More. Yeah, I believe we can give a T-shirt, right, for that. The problem that we need to know what size or all size, any size fits all, right? Something like that.
Probably later. Yeah.
Probably let's do next. We will close this session and we will distribute. Just find me, right? So yeah. I will try to use my memory and to all of you. Yeah. I believe time for a few more questions.
Yeah. So, any other questions?
Anybody else has any questions or any discussion?
I have a question. Alex, where are you from? Where are you born from?
Sorry?
Where are you from? And how long have you lived in Singapore?
Salamak, it's so hard to answer, to be honest. Typically, when uncle asks me about that, I say that I'm from Kalang. So I'm from Kalang.
Oh.
So yeah, it's right. That bridge, and we can go to Geylang, and it's a nice frog porridge there. So I can recommend. I don't know about this, this when guys play this game, but about frog porridge, that's super nice. Yeah, and chili crab, of course.
Cool.
Yeah.
Tell me, what does the dog represent?
I believe that that's the way to attract more attention. That's it. Nothing special, right? Yeah. No, I have only kids, right? So I believe that don't be offense, right? Pets lovers. It seems I will have a lot of haters after this talk. So the thing that one day I talked to my wife and we decided that children or kids, they develop, and pets, they have limited option to develop. That's why I prefer invest in kids. That's something maybe the long-term investment, if you with investments, right? Maybe even high risky, but who knows? We'll see in many years.
Yeah. So, hey, do you use Ansible to manage Kubernetes versions upgrade, or you have you manage multiple cluster, and if you want to do upgrade, you create a new cluster, migrate, and then kill the whole cluster because of this?
So that's a good question, because I believe that Ansible and some other tools, they quite similar, or they have let's say, features that can be interchanged, or they are actually interchangeable. And I know that a lot of people, they use Ansible for version management, and especially when we talk about not managed clusters, when you need to manage your cluster's configuration and setup. In my case, what I'm kind of aware and how that typically happens, I intentionally split two phases, and I define them as configuration phase, and before configuration you have provisioning phase. This is the philosophy that I follow. And for me, Kubernetes version upgrade, it's still provisioning. So we try to solve that during provisional phase. So in this case, we, all due respect, in Terraform, we do this in Terraform. We do not do this in Ansible. So in Ansible, that's more like quite custom or specific configuration. So yeah, as I mentioned before, that can be quite bizarre installations or actions that you cannot achieve with standard resources or parameters in Terraform. And of course, if you cannot do this in Ansible directly, you can use Bash glue or something. So just recap, right? So I prefer to minimize that Ansible configuration and just isolate that with configuration and the stages that you cannot do somewhere else. Because, for example, in Terraform, this is sponsored by Terraform? No, by HashiCorp. I don't think so, right? But it sounds like, I'm pitching, yeah, let's say elevator pitch for Terraform. It's much more regulated, I believe, space where you can do crazy things. For example, cluster upgrades, right? So, and if that's possible, I know that that's not all the times that it's possible, but you can do this, I believe, and if you can do this, and for example, provisioning phase, to that in provisioning phase. This is what I follow. But why not? Why not?
Yeah, we have one more question.
So I have I saw your slide. You have 200 classes.
Yeah, that's all fictional as we know. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
For the show. Yeah.
Okay, so I have questions on not on the provisioning side, but on the Kubernetes traffic engineering side.
Yeah, traffic engineering. That's called for engineering traffic doctor or something. That's a good one. Maybe we can cover that next kind of thing. But okay, if that's straightforward and with configuration, go for it.
So the question is simple. Some of the microservices on one cluster, how they communicate to the microservices on other clusters. It's on traffic routing perspective. For example, one cluster go down, how the traffic reroute in terms of HADR perspective. That's one. Second question is how these services find and talk to each other from different clusters. Service discovery. Yeah.
Wow, that's probably the yeah. So I believe that will be a spotlight for the speaker. Anyway, and that will be smoke. I mean, the fake smoke, right? To make this more like a show. That's a good question. To be honest, right now there is no clear concept, right, in Argo CD, and I believe I used quite up-to-date version. Maybe I just keep the last release, the latest one. There is no way to, let's say, use these terms like resources in more than one cluster. So it's isolated with your application, or even, yeah, with your application rather, even with your cluster or clusters. It means that they more like have no idea about each other, right? So they just live their own lives. And in this case, you can think that two clusters talk to each other like two virtual machines or two strangers. I know that it might be sounds not that optimal, but bringing some multi-cluster service mesh, oh gosh, I still kind of believe that it's really hard to implement. I mean, to make this, of course, once again, not promoting some tools by HashiCorp, but you can organize machine-to-machine communication much more efficient using some well-known products. But I mean, traditionally, I believe that it's still ingress controller, and it goes out the cluster, and then it's in some isolated environment, and then it talks to another cluster with no clear idea on that networking level, and there is no networking context that it's a microservice in those two clusters. I believe I personally don't have that experience. If you have, just ping me. Probably we can have a quite fruity discussion. One more. All right.
No question.
And that's the last question, right? Yeah. Yeah. So
is that one of the functions of Argo is the safety part. I think all are rollouts. So rollouts part in Blueprint deployments or different kind of deployment that it provides.
yeah, that's a nice question. I don't use that, so that's probably a nice thing to explore. As I mentioned before, and this Argo story, we're talking about maybe 2019, 2020, right? That was Argo CD and probably nothing, or just ideas how to do events and workflow and rollouts. And I believe rollouts, it's even more beefy, right, to control your continuous delivery. And to be honest, for infrastructure-related applications, and here we're talking about cluster configuration, not applications, right? That's why I'm maybe struggling to answer about traffic engineering between clusters. It's not that important to have that beefy functionality, but for application, definitely, why not go for this Argo rollouts, right? Because it will give you, another next level of control for your delivery. Maybe just as a toy for infrastructure, we can try to do that. But yeah, that's in the backlog to research.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we will wrap up. Once again, find me who asked the question. We will distribute T-shirts. First come, first serve. I'm talking about the sizes, right? And stickers, the same thing, right? So that's nice stickers with Kubernetes memes, right? And Tictone, who's using Cloud Native CI. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Ariel? Yeah. Here you go. Sharing screen.
Yeah. Great.
Good evening. My name is Ariel. I will talk about mainly on Terraform and one of the providers that I have developed. This is about using Excel as a data source for your data inputs. So, a little bit of background on why did I did this this provider. So mainly, normally we know data inputs for Terraform, input variables, bars, but for enterprise projects that I have done, and my experience, they all use tabular data, which is more likely a CSV file. This becomes some issue sometimes, and there is one use case that I have experienced. Yes, this background. The clients are just giving us Excel files, so for their master data. So one of this Excel files all contains all of their configurations, so basically everything. And once then the developer receives that file, once they will do is for each worksheet, they will export it into CSV so that Terraform can take it as an input. Then there will be sometimes requirements change. The developer updates the CSV, but then forgets to update the Excel back because the um, developers sometimes forget things. There will be some inconsistencies now on your data in the CSV and the master data in the Excel sheet. And also, there's some data in tabular data that is basically very complex. For example, you have multiple tags on your columns. Then you have to develop your Terraform configurations with a specific number of tags. But then tags are not normally uh, uh, with a specific number of the tags that you have. It can be n numbers, whatever, too many things that you can put in, just like tags, secondary setter blocks for AWS. Those tags are those hash maps and then lists that you can, which can be n numbers. So why did I create the Excel provider? So the solution, why not use directly the Excel? So in using the Excel, you still use all the functionalities of Excel, like the column formatting, the lookups, the formulas, the functions that the values of all the formulas that you create in Excel, which is not possible using CSV. Then you can also group together related resources, such as if you have multiple number of tags or all those that are needed in your configuration as lists, then you can group them together using this provider. So that's why maybe I think I created this a bit last year. So now the provider is called I didn't know what to call it before, so I just put in config because it's more on configuration workbook, and it's more it's a utility provider that can do more than just Excel. But I will be talking about Excel for now. So you can go to this link to see what is this provider is all about. So a bit of samples that to use the configuration. This is the normal the Terraform provider configuration. I didn't put anything on the provider configuration config here because I don't want to limit the number of Excel files that you can open up in your configuration. Then this is one of the data source that we can use is config workbook. So an example for this is I have an Excel file which have the name, cider blocks, all these other fields. As you notice that I have some prefixes on the column names, which is L and T, which stands for something. L stands for a list. So the provider will automatically convert it into a list. So if it's just a comma delimited inside the column, then it will provide you the list already. And all those P, which is mainly for tags, it will be created, the output of this will be collated into one single data, which is for tags. So the sample of the Your data source will be something like this. You need to put in the name of the Excel file, the worksheet name, and then your, what are you trying to configure? What is the data all about? Then the output will be something like this. So if it is a VPC, you will have this VPC and all the list of configurations, your title blocks, and the name will be here. And as you can see in the secondary title blocks, it will become a list already. And the tags will be collated. So for the environment and purpose, it will be something like it will automatically become tags. So the same thing, some other samples will be like this. For this is a security group. The same that is this a different number of tags, and you will have unlimited number of tags that you want if you like. And so this is the main syntax of all the properties that are needed for the configuration workbook. So the Excel file, which is a string. If the Excel is password protected, then you can also put in the password and the worksheet name, configuration item. You already have these headers. This is still new and it's still I'm still putting in some updates here for the headers because some of the Excel files that you have might be read only, and if you don't have the correct column names for your configuration. So in here, in the headers, you will be able to assign for each column the name of your configuration property. Then it can also do filters, which is and lookups. And I put in here something like orientation. But since some of the data are in vertical mode or horizontal mode, so meaning horizontal is you have the columns on top, which is row by row you have your data. But on vertical, all your columns on the left side, and your data is on the right. So it can also cater for that. For the filters and lookups, you can, if you don't want everything in the Excel file to be read by your configuration, you can use filters. Just put in what is the header column header name and the values that you need to include. And for the lookups, this one is like a function, a VLOOKUP function. Like if you want something, a value from other worksheets, so then you can put in your column name on your current worksheet, and which is looking up for for another worksheet with the key and the value that you want to see. With the key and the value are the columns that you want to get. Okay, here are some of the data prefixes that you can make use. String, so actually it's the default. I don't need to specifically put in the S because it is automatically a string. Then number, also numeric, you can use L, M if you want to have a hash map. That is also the value for a hash map should be like the key equals the value, then comma, key equals value, then it will automatically convert it into a hash map. Then Boolean, it will take the yes and no, 1, 0, true, false as a Boolean values. And tags, already it will collate all of those P underscore with as a tag property. So the config workbook, it outputs only string. So JSON string, but you can use the JSON decode of built-in of Terraform. So it will output the same, just like the same output that I showed you, something like this. Okay, now I think what's next? Because this is mainly for the Excel uh, data input, and more features will come in for this provider, and I am already receiving a lot of enhancement requests from some users, and I will be putting them one by one. So you can check out my GitHub that uh, for all the new things that is happening. And I will be also publishing modules that will basically use this Excel file, Excel provider. Uh, Sometimes it's difficult for some developers to adjust to the provider. So I will be putting up modules for different cloud providers. Okay, I think that's my take. And if you have any questions, oh, there's a lot of questions. Okay, what's your name?
Uh, just curious. I'm thinking on the user of the module standpoint. So who is the intended author of the Excel spreadsheet?
The spreadsheet will be coming from the client itself. So normally, how we coordinate with the clients, we give them the schema of what are the needed columns that they need to include in their their spreadsheet. And then we also explain to them this is the prefixes, but if they don't want to put prefixes, then we will be able to use that in if we put a schema on our own also.
That means that the client is not happy with it.
Yes. Mainly this is for those client because yep. Mainly. This came from that. Yep.
I saw the tag that
Yes.
is it not possible to use it as a map? Or what is the reason?
Yeah, you can use it as a map, but no. But sometimes the clients would like them to be separated into different columns. So that's just to have a better way of saying the. But we can also use maps, but it should be inside one column because the how I made this is to convert maps from the key equals value, then comma key equals value. Then it's not really a good way for the clients to input the data.
Will any go break?
No, no. So if the tag is missing, then it will have a blank tag. This provider will only read the used rows and columns of the Excel. So it will not go beyond all those rows, 240,000 rows.
So I
Yeah,
guess for
another
the
one?
interest of time, if you guys have any more questions, you can find him after to
Yeah.
ask. But maybe in a summarized version, for anyone who wants to create a provider like what you had, how difficult is it?
To create a provider, you must learn how to use any program. I used Golang for this provider. If you have any programming experience, because I didn't know Golang before, so when I try to learn, it's gonna be easy. Golang is easy also. So it's like Python.
Okay, cool.
So yep. And another one thing I just wanted to ask to add, uh, does it need the Excel application to function? The answer is no. So it can work on servers that don't have Excel application.
That's very interesting. We'd love to find out more. Feel free to reach out to Ariel after this discussion. So I'll next call on to Nero. Thanks a lot.
Actually,
Good evening. I'm Nirosham. I'll be talking about AWS Control Tower Account Factory. Say, right. Some of the challenges we were having is for account creations or modifications or any changes. It was taking a lot of lead time, and then whatever the process we have was manual and error prone, and we didn't have any visibility on like how the account changes or modifications are done. Right, so we put up some goals to make sure like we have a uniform controls and workflows. And then this account request workflow should be a self-serviceable. So for example, if a developer needs an account, he should be able to use GitHub to raise a pull request to create an AWS account. And it should be auditable and accountable. So we should be able to see the history of the changes for accounts. And the last one is to prevent any misconfiguration. So the earlier workflow we had is either using some of the CloudFormation templates, like manually executed, or some of the accounts were created ClickOps. So there were error prone, and then there were some misconfiguration as well because of miscommunications, misunderstandings, etc. So what is AFT? So AFT is a account factory for Terraform. It is an open source module from AWS. So it's a Terraform pipeline to provision and customize your accounts in using AWS Control Tower. So the basic governance part is done by AWS Control Tower, and it adopts GitHub models so to automate the full process. It supports Terraform Cloud, Terraform Enterprise, and Terraform Open Source. So it's released during 2021 reInvent, right? At a high level, these are the components in a account factory Terraform. There will be an AFT pipeline, which is actually interacting with the service catalog and control tower. And then we will have post-account creation customization. So we will be able to do additional customizations on top of it. And the second component is the AFT feature options. So there are about 3 optional feature flags available in the account factory. For example, you will be able to delete any default VPC created by control tower. Or if you want to turn on CloudTrail data events, you should be able to turn it on using the feature flag. Or if you want to turn on the enterprise support, that also can be turned on using feature flags. And the other component is the AFT customizations. There are like 3 different types of customizations available. One is provisioning customization, and the other one is the account customization, and the last one is global customization. I will go through these in detail later. Right, so as an overview, this is how the AFT deployment model will look like. So developer will be able to raise pull requests and to create the accounts, and then it will all the metadata and everything will be stored into DynamoDB, and it will be interacting with the service catalog and control tower APIs. And there will be a separate step functions workflow, which is listening on the control tower events. So once the account is created or modified, it will be run the additional pipelines. Like as I mentioned, like there are 3 ways of customization there, like provisioning, customization, account, and global. All these customization will be run. Right, so for deploying the account factory, this is an open source module from AWS. So this is how we typically did. The main prerequisite is you should have a control tower landing zone deployed in your account. And then it supports from Terraform version 0.15.1. So it should be greater than that. And then we should, once the control tower is deployed, you will be having a management account, log archive account, and audit account from the control tower. And after that, you need to create a separate AWS account for this AFT pipeline itself. So those are the parameters we are passing to deploy that AFT. So this is the first bootstrapping portion.
Try this one.
Right. For the VCS provider, it supports various VCS provider, whichever the AWS Code Star supports, like Code Commit. You can use GitHub Enterprise, GitHub, or Bitbucket. So for those, if you are using a VCS provider that doesn't support the Code Star, then there should be an alternative to do the mirroring to Code Commit. Like for example, if you are using GitLab, then you should be mirrored to Code Commit to run the pipeline. And then for each customization, we will having repositories. One is for the account request, as well as for the global customization, account customization, and provisioning customization. So all these changes will be in GitHub repo. So this is the initial bootstrapping part. So while this one will take around, it will deploy around 324 resources, and it will take around 30 minutes to deploy everything. And it will create a couple of code pipeline for account request and the provisioning customization. And then there will be step functions workflow as well created. Right. So if you are using the site is using the OSS module itself, like how the account request flow is. So we need to provide certain parameters, like mandatory parameters. What is the account name, account email, and then SSO details, account tags, and additional custom fields. So what we have created internal modules to simplify this user interface, because our users are developers. They will be the one raising the account request. So it's that additional validations and standards to make sure everyone follows the certain account tags and validations also added to make sure these are the only allowed environments, for example. Right. The major portion of this account request workflow is when we are raising a new account request, what happens is it actually save all those metadata information into a DynamoDB table. So including the account email details, the account tags, and as well as the additional custom fields. This custom fields is the most important one, which will help us to do additional customizations in using the global customization or the other pipelines. So what will happen is at the account request, all this metadata will be stored into DynamoDB. So it gives us the option to do queuing. Like if we are using like manual way of doing a account creation, we won't be able to create more than like one account. Like right now, control like service catalog support like at least 5 concurrent account can be provisioned. So the DynamoDB gives the option to do the queuing and process these accounts. Right, so this is the typical flow when we are using a pull request. The account request is the code pipeline will first run, and the code pipeline will create a Terraform Cloud Workspace, and the Terraform Cloud Workspace also will, and all these changes will be going to the DynamoDB, and there will be the Lambda function will be like watching this DynamoDB and then triggering the additional actions to put it into an SQS. So and after this went into SQS, then there will be another Lambda function which will be like fetching like 5 account requests at a time and then triggering the service catalog provision product. So this is the first flow happens. Then after this happens, the actual account provisioning will happen. Then there will be another CloudWatch event rule, which is listening for these control tower events. So based on the control tower events, there will be once the account is created, that additional flow happens, which will like again trigger additional step functions. Right? So yeah, these are the additional functions which have like it triggers a lot of Lambda functions to create the metadata, all those into the DynamoDB, like as a for auditing purpose as well. And it triggers Lambda function to create all the feature options, and then it gives the account provisioning customization as well. And again, it will go into create a code pipeline for that particular account, right? So this is a provisioning customization. It gives a like a step function workflow to extend the customization. Like if you want to, let's say while provisioning an account, if you want to make sure you want to add some alternate context, for example, like billing context or security context, all those things can be added here. Or else, if I think of another use case is sometimes we want to onboard certain accounts into our monitoring solution while provisioning. Once the account is provisioning, we want to onboard the account into, for example, observability tool or maybe a CSPM tool. All those things can be done using this one. So we can actually extend, like create additional step function to trigger our own Lambda, do decoupling and everything. Actually, this is quite a bit complex part. So we are not really using the provisioning customization a lot. The most thing we use is the global customization to make sure that all the accounts are standardized. The account customization pipeline looks like this. It's listening to 2 source code repositories. One is the account customization repo, and the other one is the global customization repo. So whenever there are changes are pushed, then it will trigger the code pipeline to execute the changes. Right. So this pipeline also has like steps like called pre-build and post-build. So that also gives opportunity to do some additional modifications. For our case, like if we left the default customization pipeline to create the Terraform Cloud Workspaces, it doesn't come with like proper tagging or proper permissions. So we use that pre-built scripts to add, like create the workspace ourselves with the proper permissions. Right. Right. This is how the global customization looks like. The structure. All these source code structure can be found in the open source module. Like some of the examples, what we do is like we enforce some baselines, like IAM baselines or S3 baselines, everything into the account. All these control we will be able to use using the custom fields I mentioned earlier, which is actually added into the DynamoDB. So when it is added into the DynamoDB, the account pipeline itself fetch those values and add it into the SSM parameter store on the account. So when we are running the global customization, we simply need to read the SSM parameter to find the values and do the customization using that. So we will be using data resource to read and then do the changes. Right. So this is another customization mode we have is the account customization. This is to specifically target certain accounts, right? For example, if you want to do customization only for sandbox accounts or dev accounts, or maybe specifically or log archive account, we need to we can add these structure. Like we need to make sure the names are matching here, and then at the account request we will put the name like as the customization name. So if the account request has a customization name called sandbox, then we will run the sandbox customization. Right. Right. So while after doing, like, let's say like we all have all the global customizations, everything built in, then we create an account. It will have all the customizations run through, and then it will create the standard account. But let's say we have started adding some additional changes to the global customization, right? So we introduce a new baseline. So how we propagate the changes to already provisioned accounts. So for that, we have an option to invoke the customizations. It's also via the step function workflow. So for invoking the input JSON will look like that. It has several options. Also, you can target OU level. You can target individual account level as well. And then even based on the account tags, you can target and execute the customizations. Right. So this moving into AFT gives us a chance to go into auditable and change logs. So we will be able to view everything into the commit history. And we were able to do some enforcements using GitHub Actions, the CI. And once all the automated checks are successful, only we will be able to merge the changes. And we added some additional automated preventive guardrails as well using Terraform conditions and validations. So, and all the changes must go through like a change review process. So now we are managing fearlessly around like 160 plus AWS accounts. Like last time, the account creation was taking like more than a week. Now it's changed to 30 minutes. And even like any changes to the account updates also can be done in 15 minutes. Right. So the lessons learned, the humans are the weakest linkers, like they are error prone. So that's why we added all the CI checks and automatic mechanism to detect those issues. And the other thing is the documentation is also a key. Like once we created this thing, we done a quite amount of document on like how to create the account for the developers to self-service. And the other thing is the user experience also important. So since our users are the developers, we made sure the user experience is better. And the last part is the for AFT, the development and test iteration is quite difficult to work with because it's going through the step function workflows and all. So that's also one of the reasons we are primarily using the global customizations only, like not touching on the account customization right now. Right. I can show you like how our typical pull request will look like. So in a GitHub pull request, we will be creating the accounts, putting standard tags, and then certain additional parameters based on this. And once this is approved, then the Terraform Cloud pipeline will run. So it will be the one like adding all the content into the DynamoDB table. So here we are adding some additional validations also using null resources. So this in turn run the global customization, and this creates the AWS accounts itself. Yeah. So once it's done, then we should be able to see the account being created. Oh, so this one is a PR I raised before coming here. So it's merged and then account is created. Yeah. Yeah, that's all. Any questions?
Just now I saw there's an error check, right? There's some precondition stuff.
Yeah.
Have you considered using policy checks in Terraform Cloud?
Yeah, we do have Sentinel policies also added into the Terraform Cloud. Yeah, sorry.
So my question is on the rate of account creation. So I saw there's 150 plus accounts.
Yeah.
In the one of the pipelines, what caught my attention was a couple of SQS queues in between. So does this AFT thing times out? Why we have that SQS, right? I mean, why we need SQS in between?
Right. Okay. So right now yeah. Let me go into this. Yeah. So the control tower, the service catalog provisioning, account provisioning, I think quite recently started supporting provisioning 5 concurrent accounts at a time. So we are using like whatever the records coming into the DynamoDB, it's sent to the STS queue, and then the listening Lambda is able to fetch 5 messages from there and then do the provisioning, like concurrent provisioning at the same time. That's why the queuing is there used.
Oh, okay. So you're basically using for batch.
Yeah, right. But if we use like try to create like so many accounts at a time, we also hit into like throttling exceptions, because AWS so many services, most of the services have these throttling issues. So for those things, like we need to re-invoke the pipeline again to get around it. So for invoking customization also, like if we do the modifications as like, let's say for example, we introduce a new permission sets and we want to add to all the accounts. So that's a change happening to many accounts at the same time. So for that also, we are extended using the event-rich pipes to do the invocation in a batch mode. Right?
Yeah.
So that one like probably will be publishing in a blog future.
Okay, makes sense. The second question, because now we have retries, right? There are some of things that can fail. How I mean, are the resources that important here? I mean, are they recreated? How you guys handle that?
Right. The usually if it is processed through the account factory control server, the actual provision product, all those things we should be able to recover. But if it somehow like fails at the account factory provisioning stage, that one will need some manual operations to remove the account, deregister from control server.
Okay, so that part is manual.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see. Okay.
One more question now. Hello.
Yeah.
How many man hours?
Right. So for us, the bootstrapping part, it was quite fast. Like I think it took around at least 3 or 4 months to roll out the changes, and then we had another challenge of like importing the existing accounts into the account factory workflow. So that's also only started supporting from a specific AFT version only. So after that, we started importing all the accounts. And while importing also, we need to make sure like if the account already has certain customizations, VPC all created, we need to turn off those features. So we had to put some effort on building our global customizations, the modules to cater for all those kind of features as well. Right, but moving forward, upgrading an AFT version, it's quite straightforward. We can just whenever the new changes come in, we should be able to update. For the global any like customization changes, we have a staging setup, similar staging setup to test it out. So that's quite challenging part, like the test cycle and the iteration. We need to release and do the testing. Yeah.
Any final question? Okay. Hi. Any point of faith?
Right. So for the account update workflow, like whenever there are changes happening, that's also handled by the same using the same control tower events. So the account provisioning framework is actually monitoring for two types of events. Like one is the account creation, the other one is the account modification. So any modification related events also will be triggering the pipeline, and then it will be doing all the customizations. Right. So. Not really, but if let's say like if it is at the time of like creation, if there is for example there is the OU doesn't exist, which we are trying to provision. Those kind of scenarios, it might end up in a tainted stage. That's the stage we need to deregister the account and remove it. Yeah. So yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Niro. And I would like to thank all the three speakers, Alex, Ariel, and Niro. I hope you guys had a good time today and to learn something new from all the three sessions. And yeah, we'll move ahead. So before that, I believe everybody know about HashiCorp, right? And you would have learned more about what Terraform is and what Under can do to your infrastructure. And it's one of the powerful tool infrastructure as code. Make sure check at it. Yeah. So since we are done with it, so a bit of a promotion from our side. So yeah, what we want to do, we always we are a growing community, K8SUG and HashiCorp user group. We are a growing community. So what we look forward is for volunteers, sponsors, and speakers. So if any interested, please take a screenshot of this, and you can register yourself as a volunteer or speaker. Upcoming events, there is one Azure Bootcamp, and we have K8SUG Australia on 16 May and K8SUG Singapore 23rd May. Again, thanks to our co-sponsor HashiCorp and Rakuten for providing us the venue. And HashiCorp, I would like to thank Eric, Michael, his team over here who have done wonderful job supporting us to have everything in line. And these are main sponsors. So these are long-time sponsors for K8SUG. Yeah, so it's a bit self-advertisement about me and my colleague. So we are the core organizer of K8SUG. These are other organizers who help us keep our meetup alive and working. So here we want you to please scan and please share your feedback. And we'll give you 5 minutes to share your feedback. And once you share your feedback, this is the first time what we are doing is we will do a spin the wheel. And so since we have swags, the first 10 people will get swag. So it would be a t-shirt or tag. So please go ahead and share the feedback. Yeah, we'll keep it for 5 minutes. I think that's too much, right? 2 minutes only.
After that 2 minutes, I will collect all the details. I sent you the link. How did I send you the link? टीचर को सॉल्व करना क्या साइड के साथ टीचर को
अगर एक बार देख ले